Hi, I'm Juliet McCutcheon from Channel Factory. I'm here today with Will McMahon from Spark Foundry. Thanks for being here, Will.
Thanks for having me.
So, Will, I know that you at Publicis and particularly at Spark recently launched an initiative called DIME. Could you tell us a little bit about that and why you thought it was an important initiative to launch into the industry?
Yeah, so DIME, which stands for Diverse and Inclusive Media Exchange, was a brainchild of Azad Ali, who's particularly inspirational for anybody who hasn't worked with him. Don't look at the camera. They can edit that, it's fine. So Azad basically came up with the concept of DIME, and DIME is all about finding more inclusive media, running ads there, and then also rewarding those publishers and content creators that are reporting responsibly and being inclusive in the way that they speak with their content. So, for instance, if somebody was publishing anti-abortion content or, abortion misinformation, we might try and move money away from those guys and move it into those publishers that are reporting responsibly about current affairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not just an approach for Spark, so to say, or for Publicis, but it's actually looking into the publishers that you work with and send ad dollars, to use an old phrase, ad money towards. You're really looking into the integrity, I suppose, of the partner.
Yeah, so it's quite a long and complicated vetting process. So we'll talk about the programmatic display and video ecosystem first, because that's where we're currently live. So that's in beta. We're testing that with a couple of fairly proactive clients. But we work with a third-party provider called NewsGuard. So what they do, basically, it's not just us going, we think this publisher is good. It's a third party coming along and vetting them and making sure that all of their content is robust. Basically, they've got a number of checks, and we just make sure that they pass those checks in order for us to consider monetizing their inventory. So it's not me, Will, saying, I don't like this publisher. It's us going through. And at the moment, we're partnered with Brand Advance, who have like a large network of basically like LGBTQ plus and BAME sites. We've got The Guardian on there, ESI Media's on there, and The Mirror is also on there. But we're working with many, many more to try and get them through the vetting process as well. And then outside of programmatic, and this is the bit that we've been speaking about, we're trying to make it so that DIME could be used across every media channel. So we don't want to just have it so, because realistically, display and video it's good to have that up and running, and that's a great way of funding money where it needs to be. But that's only one small part of the total ecosystem. We want to make it so that if a client came to us and said, we want to activate our entire media budget throughout the year, 100% of it across DIME, we're in a position to be able to do that. Because that's really how we start to fuel change. Like, small amounts of money will make publishers take notice, but when we can start to potentially fund large amounts of budget through DIME, then potentially we can start to change the industry and also make it more rewarding just for everybody involved. Obviously that's all consented. We wouldn't do it without client's permission. It's not our money, it's the client's money. But if we have clients that do want to be actively working in this space, and we do have clients who said, we must put 5% of our budget, 10% of our budget towards diverse and inclusive media, we have a proposition that allows them to do just that. So it's almost just like creating the opportunities that a lot of clients are looking for.
So it obviously, the list of partners that you work with needs to be constantly evolving as well as the topic. Do you find with this idea of having like a 5% or a 10%, does that come up a lot with the brands that you work with? Like, do people have certain quotas or like a box that needs to be ticked, or is it more of ensuring that every partner that you work with and partner with has a certain amount of representation and diversity included, kind of by default?
It's a really good question, right? So I think the 5% is basically, for those brands that have the 5 or 10% rule, it's not like a minimum. It's more like it's a guideline to make sure that every campaign hits those hygiene thresholds, like a viewability threshold almost. We want to achieve 50% viewability on this, right? It's the same thing. We want to achieve 5-10% diversity with our spend. But if we were to say we can scale it further, I don't think they'd have any problems turning around and saying, let's go past that.
Of course.
With just the same way as viewability. And then for all the other brands that don't specifically have that within their media budgets, who don't have that 5-10%, whatever number it is, we're having very positive conversations with them anyway. So we've got other clients who are testing at the moment who don't have a set budget that they have to spend within DE&I, or at least not to my knowledge. They might do internally, but on media they don't have specific parameters. But they're still very open to testing, working in the space, trying to help us actually build relationships and progress as well. So it's quite rewarding to find brands that are really in the space and trying to innovate here as well.
I think me and you talked about this before, that it's not something that we want to become obsessed with measuring and like always making sure that we're hitting those KPIs.
Yeah.
I think when you and I were talking about this before, you were saying you just get a better feeling at working for a company that is trying to do something in the space. And then that's almost like internal marketing. It makes you happier to work at Spark, and then you do better work for your clients.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, yeah, so I remember Azad presenting this idea to me, and I was like, this is amazing, how can I help? I immediately shot my hand up because it's just very exciting. But I mean, across the board, well, Spark have been doing a lot. So we've got 29% BAME background employees now. And I mean, ultimately that is just a number, but at least it's a positive direction number, so it's going up.
Yeah.
But I think the really telling bit is that it feels more positive to work there. Like, I mean, I've worked at Spark/Proof of Media for a really long time, and it's really noticeable to see how it shifted, but also like the freedom of ideas now.
Yeah.
So anybody is like, I mean, even like our execs, we really encourage them to stand up and talk about their ideas, and that's really notable. And having all these different ideas coming from all these different perspectives is really fun, basically.
Yeah.
And then because it's fun, people typically enjoy work more, do better jobs, and we drive better results for our clients.
That is such a good point, because it actually feeds into the idea of representation as well, of like, it still can't be just the same group of people in a room somewhere saying, now we need to have more diversity. It needs to be from like the ground level of everybody in the agency. So
Yeah.
I think that's really great that you guys are doing that. I wanted to ask you a little bit about block lists.
Oh yeah.
Specifically related to how strategies for diversity and inclusion are being embraced within the agencies. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how in activation, for anyone who's unsure, within activation for brand safety purposes, a lot of brands have these, we call them block lists, of keywords that are implemented into campaign setup for traditionally they're seen as the way to ensure brand safety.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about in Spark and the DIME initiative, what you're doing to kind of overhaul that approach.
Yeah, so I would struggle to find a brand within Spark who doesn't have some sort of keyword exclusion list in place, I think.
And in the world, really,
in the world,
to be
yeah.
honest.
I mean, it's basically just seen as sort of quote-unquote good practice.
Yeah.
There's a problem here, though, because when I recommend that everybody goes and finds their keyword exclusion lists, and what it'll do is effectively stop you running against content that contains that keyword.
Yeah.
Have a look through that list. Have a search for words like Islam, Judaism, gay, bisexual, because I looked through menstrual as well, I saw on there as well, abortion. It's amazing how much content gets blocked because of that. And when you start to think about, like, if you're trying to reach diverse communities, then maybe we're blocking a lot of the inventory by blocking potentially a lot of content that they may mention or consume. So it becomes really challenging to actually work with those keyword exclusion lists. So what we need to do is we need to go through and either find solutions that work better. So part of DIME is actually saying to clients, look, we need to move away from your keyword exclusion list. We're not saying you should do away with that across everything. Like, there is a long tail of programmatic inventory. You might want to keep that in place just for your own safety. But if we're working with trusted publishers, we don't need that keyword exclusion list because they're going to guarantee the safety for us. So there's a really good example. It's not necessarily about diversity and inclusion, but The Guardian in 2020 had their biggest news day ever in, I'm going to say November. The specific date escapes me. But effectively, during the American election, it was their biggest day ever for people coming into the site. So the most visited day of The Guardian ever. They couldn't monetize. It was also their lowest ad sale day ever as well, because Trump was on the keyword block list. So they couldn't monetize that content. And like, to my mind, there's quite positive content coming out as well that's being excluded because it's effectively getting rid of Trump. And I think we can hopefully all agree that's a good thing. I can't believe I have to preface that. That's a good thing. So at any rate, we want to make sure that like people like The Guardian are able to monetize all of their content.
Yes.
So that means that we need to get rid of exclusion lists and ensure that actually like we have other safeguards in place for clients.
Yeah.
Just not ones that are so restricted that they end up limiting reach or scale or diversity.
And I think that's where like the responsibility comes to tech partners and publishers like ourselves, like The Guardian, for agencies to trust that we've done the work for you, that the word Trump doesn't need to be blocklisted across the entire media ecosystem. We'll look at the syntax and like where the word appears and the context of the word as a whole, not just we don't want everyone to just be defunding good quality news and good quality content because of one keyword.
Exactly.
I really like that point about the exclusion, the block words.
I mean, I think it's important to note as well that tech has come so far in the last 5 years. So a lot of the keyword exclusion lists that we put in place have been in place for roughly about 5 years or so.
Yeah.
But if you think about like the phone that you had 5 years ago versus the phone you have now, or like, I don't know, the metaverse, or whatever new technology you want to think about, self-driving cars, whatever it is, I know they don't 100% work, but the point is that in the space of 5 years, we've gone from basically nothing to having massive leaps forward. The same is true of keyword inclusion and exclusion lists. Like the ability to understand semantics within a page has grown immensely. We can actually start to make slightly more informed decisions without having such a rigid list.
I actually remember until recently, I saw once on an again, I won't name names, but I saw on an exclusion keyword list, Manchester. Because of the bombings that happened in Manchester, content about people of Manchester is being excluded all over the internet.
Including the entirety of the Manchester Evening News.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing we're trying to avoid, basically. And I think it's also that, like, well, look, I get why brand safety is so important, because I always liken it to somebody running a cafe. So if they sell a sandwich that somebody doesn't like, that's fine. So if you run against some content that's kind of like not okay, you can get away with it. Like not like bad. Like we're not talking like extremist content. We're talking about somebody has a slight difference of opinion with this content. Ultimately, somebody doesn't like your sandwich. They'll get over it. If you sell somebody a harmful sandwich, one that makes the meal and they die, that's a serious problem. You shut up shop forever. So I really understand why brands are so concerned, because all it takes is one bad sandwich or one bad impression to ultimately mess everything up. But at the same time, technology has come so far that we don't have to worry as much about those sandwiches being bad.
Exactly.
Sorry, that analogy got a bit away from me.
No, there's less food poisoning in the ad tech sphere.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.